our intuition will be silenced no more. This is the podcast called Heard It All Before. Welcome to the Heard It All Before podcast, where we are going to be digging deep into the mysteries, hidden histories, unearthing things they don't want us to know, and questioning things because it's time to find out what's really going on in this world. So curious minds, critical thinkers, welcome. Sometimes throughout the podcast, I might get a call from my intuition, but my intuition is just talking to me, tell me things that I just need to know. And I will share that with you guys. So let's get into it. Welcome to episode 1 of Heard It All Before, The Lost Beginnings. Were the early humans giants? First of all, there's petrified giants around. Now, those of you that don't know what a petrified giant is, petrification is a real process that happens in geology and paleontology where organic matter like wood basically over time gets submersed under like mineral rich water and then over time becomes like a rock like substance. That is what petrification is. Even there, my intuition Yeah, I thought as much. Yeah, okay. And my intuition just called right there, and it was reminding me, saying about the floods that happened in ancient texts, the famous flood of Noah, Noah's Ark. Cool. Again, I think even again, biblical texts do say that giants were alive in those days. So my intuition is telling me something there. But anyway, let's continue. I present to you case number 1, the sleeping giant located in Ontario, Canada, in a place they call Thunder Bay. Check this out. And it looks like a giant laying on its back with his arms crossed. Okay, another example of petrification is you've got the giant petrified snake. Now guys, look at this and tell me that this was not once a living snake. Look at the detail in this. Come.
The giant snake rock in Naka Cave in Thailand. Naka, or Naga Cave itself, is reportedly come to several myths and legends, many of them imagined due to a part of the cave that looks strangely like a serpent. There is a specific stone slab that resembles a python's head, while giant rocks with scaly texture look as if they're the snake's coiling body. Some history believed that the cave earned its name for the shape and texture of stones that make the walls look like the scaled skin of a snake.
You saw that? There you go. You saw the detail of the scales. You saw the detail of the eyeball and the head shape, the body shape. Clearly that was a living snake. It's about, they believe it was 200 feet tall, 7 feet in diameter. Why would there be a giant petrified snake if there weren't giants around that time? Cool. Let's move on. Now, this story is very interesting to me. So let's move on to this story called about the Cardiff Giant.
In the heart of 19th century America, amid the backdrop of a nation grappling with scientific curiosity and biblical beliefs, a mysterious discovery would captivate the imaginations of thousands. On a crisp October day in 1869, as laborers dug a well behind the barn of William C. Stubb Newell in Cardiff, New York, they unearthed a spectacle that defied explanation. A 10-foot-tall, 3,000-pound petrified man. A colossal enigma from the depths of Earth's past. This astonishing find, known as the Cardiff Giant, would become the talk of the nation, igniting fervent debates among scientists, theologians, and the general public, and leaving a lingering question mark that still haunts us to this day.
So back in the year 1869 in Cardiff, New York, a tobaccoist, he used to sell tobacco, called George Hull, decided, you know what, I want to prove that there's some gullible people out there that believe in giants, right? So he put this elaborate hoax together, okay? The details of this hoax, the lengths he went to, he spent $500, which is the equivalent to 11,000 US dollars to this day. He spent 3 months building it, so he hired some stonemasons in Chicago. He instructed the workers to carve not just the shape, but the skin folds, the nails, the veins. They had to mimic human paws, so they got hammered thousands of little pinholes into this gypsum with steel needles and chisels. And then they washed the surface with uric acid, and to etch it so that the pores and grooves look like weathered with age. So it looked like real human-like. And then lo and behold, George Hall was one day just discovered it and said, oh, look, guys, I found a giant. Oh my gosh. This was huge at this time. Massive. People were coming in to see it. People were paying money just to look at this giant that they had unearthed. Barnum offered $60,000, which is the equivalent of $1.3 million today, to buy it. He went to these lengths. This was in the year 1869, right? 1869. Oh, sorry, my intuition's calling me. Hello. Yeah. Okay. True. Thank you. Thanks. All right. Bye. So my intuition just said to me, what else was happening in 1869? In this time in America, the Civil War had just ended. It had just ended. So the Civil War in America took place between 1861 to 1865. This incident happened in 1869, so 4 years off the war. You've just come out of war. You've just come out of American Civil War as a society. Money's low. People are building back up after rationings and houses being mashed down and all of that. Families being displaced. But you now, with your time and energy and effort, are going to spend that amount of money and that much time building a fake giant to bury it and then say, ha, you guys are gullible. I think we'd be gullible to believe that, if I'm honest. And then look at this now. Just 8 years later, there was another very similar incident. It was called the Solid Muldoon. This happened in 1877 in Colorado, yeah? This happened in Colorado. It was the discovery of a 7-foot figure with a spine extension and a tail. Again, this one, now they went as far as to mix clay, mortar, rock dust, ground bones, blood, and meat fibers. Clay to simulate veins. And they used tools to put tiny indentations to make pores and wrinkles to make it look like it was a real being. All of this again. And guess who was linked back to this one? George Hull again, the guy that just did the Cardiff Giant. Why were they doing this, spending this type of money and this type of time doing these things? My personal opinion is that these were obviously real giants, petrified beings. And then because the government didn't want it to be, known, they tried to cover up and pretend it was a hoax. It weren't no hoax, mate. Cool. Now let's move on from that. Let's look at architecture and actual structures. So, I don't know. With the research I've done on this, like on TikTok, online, I didn't see no one else talking about this. So, maybe this is a world exclusive, or put in the comments below if you have actually heard of these or looked into these or even visited them, because they're still standing to this day. We're going to fly over to Germany right now. These are the Bernwood doors. Check this out.
Inside the Cathedral of Hildesheim sat a cornucopia of once-in-a-lifetime relics which cannot and are not being replicated anywhere else in the world. First, we have the Bernward or the Bernard doors, 2 immense doors depicting the life of Christ. Each of the doors was cast as a single piece. Given the size, roughly 15.5 feet tall, roughly 4 feet wide, and nearly 2 inches thick each, and the enormous weight, over 2 tons each, this is a great achievement of its time. To date, there has been no material or carbon analysis that has been able to identify the exact origin of the material used in the Bernard doors, which was an amalgamate, consisting mostly of copper with small but nearly identical amounts of lead, tin, and zinc. These doors were created using the lost wax process. The doors depict, on the left, the book of Genesis, and on the right, scenes from the Gospels. In the inscription that is written on the doors in Latin, they come directly from an angelic temple related to the Archangel Michael. While some scholars detest the importance of this notion altogether, others suggest this means these doors were founded rather than created for the Hildesheim Cathedral. Still, there are others out there who question if these doors may not actually have some sort of biblical significance if they had not been influenced directly by the hand of God.
So these doors are 16 feet tall. They weigh just under 2 tons each, right? And they depict the story of Genesis, and they're cast in obviously bronze or whatever. They're cast in that solid material of bronze, and they're depicting the story of Genesis. my question to all this is why? A big why? Because why? And these were built in the year 1015, by the way. Why? Why so big? Why so much effort? There was no cranes, there was no technology, apparently. How did they do this? Why did they do this? Doesn't make any sense. Were there not beings big enough to actually go through those doors? Did they need to have the doors that big because of the size of the beings at that time? Cool, I'll leave that with you. And then let's go even further back and look at Egyptian false doors. Let's have a look at these Egyptian false doors.
Archaeologists confronted by a false door at an excavation site were stunned to find that it led to the tomb of Egyptian royalty. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities announced the discovery in a recent Facebook post in April. The tomb was found at the Saqqara archaeological site in the Giza Governorate of Egypt. The tomb belonged to a prince named Userfer, or Wazer-F-Ra, the son of King Userkaf. Userkaf was the founder of the 5th dynasty, which lasted from the early 25th century BC until the mid-24th century BC. The tomb was concealed by a massive false door.
And they're saying that these false doors, which are 15 feet high, are symbolic of, the temple and the journey into the afterlife. That's why they made these doors. Really? Really? You made these big doors, spent years, days, nights in that heat, carving these doors with a hammer and chisel, apparently, just to do some symbolic, this represents them going into the afterlife. What a load of BS. Please, there was obviously beings that size that needed doorways that size to walk through. Now let's check out these giant books. This is the Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Book. Check out the size of these books, guys. Look at this. These books are over 3 feet tall. They weigh over 165 pounds. They're written in one night by a monk with the devil's help. They're currently held in the library in Sweden. And this was in the year 1229. Okay, so 1229. So nearly about 800 years ago. Why? Why would they do that? Why would they make books that big? No one can even turn a page. That's how huge they are. Why go to that effort, especially in a time when they didn't have the technology, apparently, to do these things? Why would they have and craft books so big? It's not making sense to me, sorry. And then, look at this. This is the Klenke Atlas, what you just seen. This is the largest atlas ever recorded on record. It is 6 feet tall and it requires 6 men to carry it. And it was gifted to King Charles II in the year 1660 in London. This again raises many red flags to me. Why would someone do this? Why would they create this and gift it to the king? For what reason? And why so big? I think it's evidence that there were larger beings of that time. And they uncovered an atlas that they made and they probably used to travel the world at that time. But they're taking it and saying, oh yeah, it's just a gift for the king. Other things that have been uncovered that, again, that link to giants, in my opinion, is clearly the giant swords. Look at these. Look at these. So you've got the Zweihandler swords over in Germany. These are over 6 feet long and they weigh over 20 pounds. The historian says these were carried by Landsknecht mercenaries, but often too heavy for combat, so they were mainly ceremonial or for the show of strength. What kind of stupidness is this? This was during a time, this is in the 16th century in Germany, where wars and everything was happening. You know, you had to fight to survive, right? Why would you have a sword that was too big for you to carry? That's going to be embarrassing. In those days, it was all about pride. You're telling me I'm going to have a sword so heavy my soldiers can't even lift it. No. Clearly, there were again giants of huge stature, of huge strength that could carry these swords and do some madness with them. Okay? Then, you got the Wallace sword. This was discovered in Scotland in the 13th century. It's 5'6" long and it's said to have belonged to William Wallace. I don't know much about who William Wallace is, but I will look into it afterwards. He could have been a giant or the descendant of a giant. Why were they there? Why were they there, guys? Now, let's move on to skeletons and ancient texts. So, check out these. Again, these were all discovered within the last 20 years of each other. So you've got the New York Times, where they discovered 18 skeleton mounds in 1908 that were all over 7 feet tall. You've got the Scientific American, where they discovered a giant skeleton near Lompoc Rancho in California that was 12 feet tall. Then you got the Lovelock Cave in Nevada. Again, in 1911, they were red-haired giant skulls discovered in Nevada in 1911, which suddenly disappeared into the Smithsonian archives. Whew. Let's go into religious texts. The Bible. What does the Bible tell us about giants? So in Genesis 6 verse 4, there were giants in the earth. And Numbers 13:33, Israelites felt like grasshoppers next to them. Let's go on to the book of Enoch. Fallen angels, father giants, Nephilim, in brackets, 450 feet tall, who devour mankind. In the Quran, it says the people of Ad and Thamud described as tall and mighty. Please excuse my pronunciation if I'm saying things wrong, by the way. You got Hadith. Prophet Muhammad said Adam was created 60 cubits tall. 60 cubits tall is about 90 feet. And it says that we've been shrinking with each generation. 100% I believe that one. I agree with that one. In Islamic folklore says that Uj ibn Anak was a giant slain by Moses. Again, apologies if I'm butchering these words. Then you got the Epic of Gilgamesh. So Gilgamesh himself is said to be 2/3 God, 1/3 man, and he was 16 to 18 feet tall, according to the stories of Gilgamesh. Then you've got Greek mythology, talking about gigantes, titans, and Olympians. You've got Norse mythology, talking about Jotun, frost giants, and even in Native American texts, you've got the Sitaka, you've got cannibals and red-haired giants. And I did just tell you about the red-haired skulls that were discovered in 1911. And they've got rid of them in the Smithsonian archives. So how comes all these different faiths and different cultures of different times are all referencing giants if they didn't exist? I'm not buying this story about they were myths and all this stuff. No, there's way too much evidence telling us that giants existed. So what have we heard all before? This is what we've heard all before from these scientists and historians. This is the mainstream media, mainstream press. This is the mainstream stuff we're taught in school. We've got the Smithsonian Institution. They denied destroying giant skeletons, and they claim the alleged finds that they found of the skeleton bones were mastodons and mammoths. That's what they're saying. You got the National Geographic 2007 said that the viral skeleton photos that we've seen around were Photoshop contest fakes. Now, the American Museum of Natural History says that they're saying that Greek giants were alleged stories. They were just symbolic. The ancient Greeks told stories of giants, describing them as flesh and blood creatures who lived and died, and those whose bones could be found coming out of the ground when they were buried long ago. Indeed, even today, and surprisingly, human-like bones can be found in Greece. Modern scientists understand such bones to be the remains of mammoths, mastodons, and woolly rhinoceroses that once lived in the region. So they're repeating that narrative. But ancient Greeks were largely unfamiliar with these massive animals and believed that they were the enormous bones of human-like giants. They say that, from Paul Bunyan to of American folklore, that the long bones of elephants, relatives, and humans are similar enough to be confused. That's what he said. Look at this. Look at this image of an elephant skeleton and a human skeleton. Look at these images. As you can see, they're clearly very different. But let's see what the internet's saying about this. It says, the human skeleton and the elephant skeleton while both part of the vertebrate endoskeleton, have key differences in structure and number of bones due to their vastly different sizes and modes of locomotion. Humans have around 206 bones in their skeleton, while elephants have between 326 and 351 bones. Elephants' bones are much thicker to support their immense weight, and their limbs are more pillar-like. But hang on a minute. Intuition's calling me again. I know. Thank you. My intuition just told me that the American History Museum has just told us that elephant bones and human bones are similar, yet when we do our research into it, it's clearly saying that they're vastly different. Do with that what you may, guys. Do with that what you may. So, we've discussed petrified giants. We've discussed ancient doors, giant doors. The evidence is there. I do not believe that we are the most advanced civilization or the advanced human beings around right now at all. I believe that the lifespan was much longer with these ancient giants. Their capabilities, their powers, their strengths, their knowledge, their understanding of how the world works was way more than what we have today. And then we've got evidence of floods that happened, a great flood over time. Obviously, the Bible says it wiped out people because they're doing a lot of wickedness. I don't know about all that detail, but I do believe that there was giants walking around and they got wiped out for whatever reason. And then the new breed of humans came and tried to present people as, yeah, this is the great people, and say that we came from monkeys and all this absolute nonsense. But yeah, that was fun to explore that today. Next week, we are going to be looking into who were these Egyptian builders who built the pyramids and what have you. And my question is, were ancient Egyptians actually human? We're going to get into it. This podcast is all for the curious minds and the critical thinkers. Please share this with anybody you know that has questions. Thank you for watching Heard It All Before. I'm your host, Chantelle. You think you've heard it all before? Think again. Thank you.
Hidden truths, buried deep, where they will remain if you stay asleep. We'll ask the questions to find answers we seek. We were given a voice, so let's use it to speak. Our intuition will be silenced no more. This is the podcast called Heard It All Before.